Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program Islam Explained. We have our theologian joining in with us again, Omer Atilla. Welcome to the program again.
Thank you, it's great to be here, Waisal.
It's a pleasure to have you. Omer, last time we spoke about Musab bin Umair, one of the companions, Sahaba, during the Prophet's time. If you would like, can we continue with the companions of the Prophet?
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I think we should. Yeah.
If you like, you could probably choose a companion to talk about.
I thought about talking about Ikrimah bin Abu Jahl today.
Right.
It's a famous, very interesting character as well.
Indeed.
Yeah. So,
I think that'd be a good topic to cover. If you don't mind, we could probably talk a bit about his life and what he's done.
okay, inshallah. Now, with Ikrimah, it's very interesting because, as you know, his father was Abu Jahl, one of the greatest nemesis of the Prophet.
That's right. Caused a lot of mischief.
Yeah. And according to historical records, that we know that Ikrimah was just as hostile towards Islam as his father was. In fact, there were three friends there in Mecca at the time. One of them was Safwan, the other one was Khalid bin Walid, and Ikrimah. They were all friends. In fact, some scholars, historians call them the Three Musketeers. And they were always against Islam, They were always into mischief. And whenever there was a, negative conflict somewhere, they were always behind it as well. And as you know, later on when Khalid bin Walid embraced Islam, there was two of them left.
The great commander that never lost a battle.
Yes, and Ikrimah continued his animosity towards Islam. In fact, he harmed a lot of Muslims, And even until the time of the conquest of Mecca, Ikrimah continued his hostility towards Islam.
When you say harm, he also caused the death of a lot of Muslims as well.
A lot of Muslims as well, yeah. And according to some records, they say there was a lot of, blood stain of Muslims on his sword. And being the son of Abu Jahl, of course, he was socially, affected by the chieftains of Mecca as well. He was young at that time. And as you know, in the Battle of Handak, the trench, he was one of the brave horsemen who even jumped over the trench onto the other side where the Muslims were in the city of Yathrib. And he showed courageousness there as well, valor there as well. And he just saved his life. It's very interestingly, jumping back out again because one of their champions, Amr, who faced Ali radiallahu anhu, their one-on-one battle. Ali took him down and defeated him, and Ikrimah took off. He jumped over the trench again. And as I mentioned before, until the day of the conquest of Mecca, Ikrimah continued to, fight against Muslims, fight against Islam, fight against the Prophet, especially on the day of the conquest, when the Prophet marched onto Mecca with 10,000 men, and they camped somewhere over the night just before they reached Mecca. And Prophet ﷺ used a very interesting strategy there because he did not want to spill the blood of people. He was the Prophet of mercy. He always tried to, avoid any type of conflict, even at that situation. He was against a very powerful enemy too. What he did was, they had this tradition with Arabs, with the military. When they camped somewhere over the night, in front of their tents, each tent would burn one bonfire.
And that would equate to how many people?
About 3 to 5, they say, 3 to 5 soldiers. What the Prophet did is he ordered all of his men individually to build a fire. And when they did that from a distance, 10,000 men appeared to be 50,000 men.
More than it seemed.
More than it seemed. And with that tactic, with that strategy, the Meccans would, think to themselves that there's no chance we can stand against such a huge army, so we should give up, we should surrender. And it worked. They did surrender, the Meccans. However, Ikrimah, the son of Abu Jahl, still continued to fight. He organized a group of men, amongst the young men, and he still tried to attack Muslims. And he was quickly defeated by Khalid bin Walid, his old friend.
His old friend, yeah.
His group was destroyed straight
From my
away.
understanding, the Prophet also got very upset that Khalid also retaliated and tried to defeat him there as well.
Yeah, because the Prophet ﷺ, as we said, being a prophet of compassion, he didn't want to harm anyone. He didn't want even a person to get a bloody nose,
Yeah.
as to say. But that was not avoidable, that one.
Yeah.
It had to happen because they were on horseback and they were attacking the Muslims. So Khalid had to defend at that position. So after the defeat, Ikrimah saved his life and he took off. He flew from Mecca. He went all the way to Yemen. All the way to Yemen on horseback. And he thought to himself, there is no place for him to survive anymore within the Mecca region. I might as well jump on a ship and go across the Red Sea into Abyssinia and start a new life there. And interestingly, he boards this ship, and on the way to the ship sails towards Abyssinia on Red Sea, the famous Red Sea.
Yeah.
On their way, this storm breaks out, and the ship is about to sink. And the captain was a Christian man. And he said to the passengers, is there anyone amongst you who does not believe in the mighty Lord, Almighty Lord? And Ikrimah says, look, I'm from Mecca, I'm an idol worshipper. We believe in many gods, And the captain is very displeased, and he says, this is probably happening because of you, You should seek refuge in the one Almighty God. And Ikrimah says, if I did that, I wouldn't be here right now anyway.
Yeah.
Why would I be here now? This is the reason that I'm here.
That's the same reason why he left.
The same reason why he left Mecca. And the captain comes back to Yemen, and he removes Ikrimah.
Takes him off the ship.
Yeah, takes him off the ship. And he's left all alone there in Yemen. He doesn't know what to do.
He can't go back because
can't
he's
go
killed
back.
so many Muslims.
Yeah, the Muslims will retaliate, obviously, because he did take, like you said, a lot of lives, And he doesn't know what to do. He's confused. And meanwhile, back at Mecca, his wife, his beloved wife, we should say, Hakim, a very interesting woman, and she really loves her husband too, Ikrimah. She has embraced Islam. She became a Muslim, and she wants to save her husband too. So she visits the Prophet ﷺ and says, Ya Rasulallah, the messenger of God, can you pardon Ikrimah so I can go and bring him back? And the noble messenger, as we said, being a prophet of compassion, says Ikrimah is pardoned. Go
Just
ahead and
like
bring him. Yeah, very interesting.
Wow.
A man who killed a lot of Muslims, the Prophet just forgives him. And his wife, Hakim, says, can I have a sign? Because if I just verbally say to him, you're forgiven, he might not believe. He might be still afraid, Can you give him a sign? And the Prophet actually takes his own, turban and gives it to Hakim as a sign that he has been pardoned. So she travels all the way by herself, all the way to Yemen, finds her husband and convinces him, to return to Mecca. As they're coming back, there's a very interesting incident there as well. They camp somewhere because it's a long distance.
Yeah, definitely.
They camp for the night, and Ikrimah tries to sort of approach his wife, get intimate with her, and she says, no, you cannot touch me because you are a disbeliever.
That would shock him.
Yeah.
His wife
Yeah.
refusing, yes.
Very interesting. She says, look, I'm a Muslim now, so it is not permissible for you to touch me. You have to accept Islam first, So Ikrimah, that affects him as well, of course. And when they return, the Prophet ﷺ is sitting with a group of men, with the Sahabis, And upon seeing Ikrimah approaching, they all get, pretty upset because they know how much harm he done to Muslims. Some of them even has their hands on their swords, ready to draw their swords. And the noble Prophet ﷺ stands up, turns towards him with a smile on his face. Welcome back, O immigrant. O muhajir, he says, welcome back.
And I think also some of the companions amongst themselves sort of belittle his father.
Yes,
and the Prophet gets upset at that as well.
Yeah, because they were talking, like you said, they were talking about, saying he's the son of Abu Jahl, the greatest enemy of Islam. And the Prophet, according to one report, narration, he says, do not, talk about the deaf, it will affect the living.
Yes.
And interestingly, the Prophet just walks up to him as if nothing happened, He gives him a hug.
Wow.
It's very interesting. And Ikrimah then says, O Messenger of Allah, will you teach me Islam? And the noble Messenger ﷺ teaches Islam to him. He embraces Islam from that point on. Because after all that years, imagine the change. And there are reports that, I find this very interesting, that Ikrimah bin Abi Jahl used to walk the streets of Mecca because he'd done so much harm to Islam, He could not forgive himself. He used to say to himself, the only way that I can be forgiven if I was martyred on the path of Islam. And there is one incident that, witnesses say that he would walk the streets of Mecca with a piece of, writings of the Quran, Mus'af, some of the verses written on some parchments. He would hold it in his hands and rub it onto his eyes, and he would say, this is the words of my Lord. This is the words of my Lord. And he would weep, Ikrimah bin Abi Jahl. And as you know, sometimes Omer radiallahu anh used to joke with him too, Of course, Omar wasn't serious, but he used to joke with him. He would say, oh, Ikrimah, you will never become a martyr because you harmed so many Muslims. Allah would not bless you with that. He was just joking.
And this was upsetting him, obviously.
It would, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Because you have that thing inside you, and it's sitting there.
But the Prophet had forgiven him, but still he had that guilty conscience. So
Yes.
it was an option that he could probably take, being martyred, so he could be forgiven.
Yes, and that's the way their mentality worked. Anyway,
Yeah.
he said, this is the only way I can be purified of all these, wrongdoings. Perhaps if I was martyred, and many years later, when they were in Medina, the Muslim army faced, as you know, it's a very famous battle, the Byzantium army, and they met at a place called Yarmouk.
Yeah.
Famous incident.
I think it was the most unbalanced.
One of the most unbalanced. Yarmouk, in Yarmouk, according to reports, the Byzantium army came with 240,000 soldiers, and with the command ship of Khalid bin Walid, the Muslim army had 46,000. So 240,000 against 46,000 men.
So that it leaves the Muslims to challenge for each Muslim about 66
A
of the others.
bit less, but it is
Less,
a
was
very,
it?
very unbalanced,
A very unbalanced, yeah.
unbalanced battle. And when they met at Yarmouk, Ikrimah, there's an incident where even when they lined up the armies against each other, Ikrimah just kicks his horse and runs towards the army lines, and he's screaming, God is the greatest. He wants to be martyred, And Khalid ibn al-Walid, the great commander, says, oh, Ikrimah, what are you doing? And he turns and says, look, this is the only way I'm going to be forgiven. He said, we need you, Ikrimah. You're an important person for us, don't do this. But he rushes through the enemy lines, And then sometimes later, the Byzantium army starts retreating. 240,000. According to records, historical records, they say that after the battle, the Byzantium army lost 120,000 men.
Wow.
That's big numbers.
It is.
And only 3,000 men was lost from the Muslim army.
Wow.
It's incredible.
It is.
That is the brilliance, genius of course, Khalid bin Walid,
Yeah.
And there's an incident there explained, narrated by Huzaifa. He says that after the battle, we were going through the battlefield to look up on people who were, wounded but still alive. As I walked around, he says, I saw this person lying down. He was the son of my uncle. His name's Harith. And he was screaming out water, water because they were in the middle of a desert. You know, his lips had dried out and he was about to die. I walked up to him and I took my water container out. Then as I was about to put it into his mouth, we heard another sound, someone else screaming out, water, water, asking for water. And Harith, with the back of his hand, said, take it to him. He pushed me away. He said, take it to him. So I ran to the other person and I saw that it was Ikrimah bin Abu Jahl. He was lying there on the ground. He was in limbo, you know.
Yeah.
They had cut him up so much, you know, and he was living his last probably minutes as well. And as I was about to give him the water container, he was smiling. I realized that he was smiling. It's very interesting.
In that situation.
Yeah. And I said to him, oh, Ikrimah, look at your condition, you know, you're chopped up. You know, how could you smile at this condition? And he said, Omar always used to say, I can't be martyred. He was happy that he was being martyred. So he says, as I was about to put the water into his mouth, we heard another sound. And it was Iyas, the famous companion Iyas. Just like Harith, Ikrimah pushed me away with the back of his hand as well. He said, go and take it to him first.
The water.
Yeah. And Huzaifa says that I walked over to the other person, Iyas. As I was about to give him the water, he passed away. I didn't make it. And with panic, I rushed back. I looked at Ikrimah, and Ikrimah had passed away too. And then I ran to my cousin, Harith. He had passed away too. And as a manifestation of ithar, you know, thinking about your brother before yourself, we actually witnessed there that all three of them preferred their brothers to
even
themselves.
at the time of death, they were preferring
Even
their
at
brothers.
the time of death. And this is why the Sahabi was quite...
What a transformation from what they were to what they became.
Yes.
Where they were very selfish, self-centered, basically they'd harm or even belittle others that were weaker than themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But when they became Muslim, it's like it was everything about their brother.
Yeah. So we can say, you know, being around the Prophet ﷺ, learning directly from him the manners. And of course, that's the manifestation of Iman to having Iman. Iman is Nur, as you know. And even his friend, it's very interesting, Safwan, his beloved friend, they were a very wealthy family. Safwan was the son of Umayyah bin Khalaf, as you know. He was the master of Bilal Habashi.
Yeah.
Bilal was his slave. And Safwan, he became a Muslim after the conquest of Mecca as well. In fact, after the conquest of Mecca, during the Battle of Hunain, Safwan was still not a Muslim. He requested some time from the Prophet ﷺ. He said, you can have all the time you want. But an intelligent man like you should not stay away from Islam for such a long time, he said. And following the battle, as you know, they gathered a great amount of war booty, you know, and they brought it to Mecca. And one night, as the story goes, that the Prophet ﷺ and Safwan was standing on top of a hill, and down the hill in the valley, there were thousands of sheep, camels, you know.
Livestock.
Yeah, livestock. And these things, like, you know, those days, like, you know, mercs, you know, they're very valuable, you know.
Each one of them, yeah.
And Safwan, upon seeing this scene, you know, the valley full of, you know, livestock, he said, you know, how fortunate is the man who owns all this, you know. And the Prophet turned to him and says, oh, Safwan, they are all yours, you know.
Just like that.
Just like that. And Safwan looked at the Prophet ﷺ and he said, only a prophet can be this generous. And immediately at that moment, he, you know, declared the Kalimah Shahadat, and he embraced Islam as well.
Wow.
They have all unique stories.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank you, Omar, for explaining Ikrimah and Safwan and other companions as well. It was very fruitful, and hopefully we'll continue on our other episodes of the Sahaba.
Inshallah. Thank you. Thank you for calling.
And I'd like to thank our viewers again for tuning in to Islam Explained, and we'll see you next time.